Here too. All right. Evening, everybody. Happy Friday. I have a very special guest. Got a very, very knowledgeable and respected Yankee fan, Bobby Milone. If you haven't seen him or heard about him, you're going to see him. You're going to hear about him tonight. So when I talk about, and you guys know me and you gals know me, when I talk about getting good information, disseminating good information, getting the story straight, and being as accurate as possible with anything that we report. This is one reason I linked right to Bobby, because he has the same mindset, dealing with good information, and we break down things that other people might not break down, other people might not talk about. So, Bobby, I want to thank you for coming on, man, and I really appreciate it. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Jason. Thank you. On a late Friday night, thank you very, very much to talk some Yankee baseball. It was a disappointing season, but let's hope that this winter the ship gets corrected and we could have some joyous moments and on different days this cold winter.
Yeah, but we've got a lot of different opinions on that, on the season itself, the postseason, the lack thereof, performance, lack of investing in the product, lack of everything, lack of coaching, misdirection, this, misinformation, that. So I'm glad you came on, because maybe we'll be able to give some folks some more information, which might help give some a little bit more perspective on certain things here. I always appreciate when I get more information and get a better perspective, because like I told you folks, I want you to have both sides of the story, because it helps you make an informed decision or an informed opinion. I don't want you to just blindly agree with me because that's what I said. I want you to actually know the full story. If I have it, I'm going to get it to you, and that's why I put Bobby on too, because we're going to talk about some things today. We're talking about Yankees finances, and Bobby came across some information regarding the Yankees finances and spending that you might find really interesting, and it might give you insight as to what they do and why they do things, why they don't do things. Okay, and this is not to scapegoat Hal or Cashman or Boone. They have their own fault in a lot of things. And we'll get into that as well. But I want you to have the correct information. So, Bobby, why don't you give us a little bit of insight into the Yankees' finances and the stuff that you've heard and the stuff that you've seen? I think you're going to find it really interesting, guys. We got a little pug in the back.
Yeah, the dog is barking back there. I'm so sorry about that.
That's fellow Yankees fan right there.
I think he sees something in the backyard.
That's right. So, I mean, we all know the Yankees being a sort of a revenue machine, right? They bring in a lot of revenue. But that doesn't necessarily mean they're swimming in the money. I mean, they do have money, right? They're profitable. There's no doubt about it. But there's a lot of debt they take on. There's a lot of things that, that's not really talked about. And, want to communicate that to you today, folks, so that you get a better understanding of why the Yankees' finances are the way they are. They're profitable. They make upwards of $600+ million a year, right, in revenues. But right off the bat, there's the revenue sharing. Okay, and that's what, 10 to 15%. So if it's 650, we'll take off 65 million right off the bat. That's money that they have to share with small market teams, and the MLB has not mandated it. Neither has the CBA, that they actually invest in the teams, invest in players. These teams can pocket the money. So as much as we call Randy Levine a jabroni at times, he has a justifiable argument here, and I would agree with it. Why I would be angry too if these teams were just pocketing the money that we worked hard to make. What's your take on that, Bobby?
And that's the thing, and I think you explained it. You laid it out pretty much. If people who have been following me for years, I was pretty heated back in, like, say 18, 19. Revenues were going up. The payroll to the revenue structure was probably in the low 30% range. Mm-hmm. Now, people at that point would flash different charts about what George spent from, let's say, 2000 to 2007, 2008, and how the percentage of revenue to payroll was at some point 75%. And I like I said, I was going on posting here and there, and more than a few people who are in the business, let's just say that, DM me, and these people do work for the Yankees, and were a little upset, saying like, before you talk out of your ass, you better know the facts. And what the facts were, and still are to this day, is George did not have debt. He had no debt. From MSG was paying him up to 2001. They started a Yes Network. They had a partnership with Goldman Sachs, but in 2007 they sold that. They sold their share to Fox Corp. And at the same time, they were building a new stadium, and they were taking on a lot of the debt of that stadium. So you have a lot of debt coming on. You have George in his in his last few years, and more importantly, I think Yankee fans need to know the hierarchy structure. Back in the '90s, if you're an older fan or like a fan like me, you remember a name like Joe Milone.
Yeah.
There are 4 Steinbrenner kids: Hank, there's Hal, and Hal's the youngest, and then there's Jessica and Jennifer. And the son-in-laws were in line. Think about this: 3 son-in-laws were in line before Hal was, or even Hank. Joe Malloy back in the '90s, if you remember, when George was suspended for that time being, he was the first person in line. They got divorced in 1998, and then after that, Steve Swindell took over, and then Swindell was there for 10 years, and then. Yeah, and then in 2007, there was a separation there.
Yeah.
Felix Lopez then became in the picture. So now you're on 3. At that point, if you remember back in 2007, there was this incident when, Alex Rodriguez was going to sign, and Hank Steinbrenner made these comments about, that potential signing and stuff. And it seemed like all hell was breaking loose. Now, Hank had some issues. We all know that. Personal issues, personal demons. But Hal was still in the back picture. He was quite young compared to the older siblings. And I think after 3 strikes, 3 son-in-laws, they all got pushed aside. I think at that point, they realized that they need somebody with more stability, and they put in Hal. What else is interesting at that point, and all this stuff could be Googled. That's what I said. So when I hear this information, first thing I do is I want to make sure it's factual. The Steinbrenner kids got very lucky because George gave them his money, his fortune, which was $600 million the year before the tax on the inheritance took place. So 4 kids are now with $150 million apiece. They like the team, but none of them really want to run the team. So and I will say this, if you really look into it, Felix Lopez was with the Yankees in 2000, let's say 2014. At that point, after that, it really went to Hal. And then Hal, started to gain the leadership amongst the owners. He has a very close bond, I believe, with the DeWitt family, which owns the Cardinals. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing with his GM, too. The 2 GMs, the St. Louis GM and Cash, are extremely close. And as you can see, Hal is, as he says many times, I'm a numbers guy. And he sees the numbers, and he doesn't, I don't know, necessarily see, what is necessarily needed for the team. I think he needs a bottom line. And like I said, going back to the beginning of the question, 2018, 2019, Hal's finally, is in control, and he's just seeing that bottom number, and he's going underneath the cap, or the tax, if you want to call it, in the middle of what's called, a World Series possible window. They're coming off 2017. They're this close from getting to the World Series. against that Houston team that's cheating or whatever. And then in 18, they lose to the Red Sox.
Yeah.
And what is he's talking about? He's talking about, getting under the tax because of, and this is when revenues are much greater, even with debt, than to payroll. And I think what happened, especially in this last CBA, I think he realized that, the game is up. He needs to raise it. But still, even if he raises it, there's only going to be so much because there's so much debt. There's the debt of the stadium. There's the debt of the Yes Network, which they rebuy, by the way. And they own, they rebuy, they own, I believe, 26%. And that was it's $3 billion. So they owe their $900 or so million. Where's that money coming from? It's coming from, Yankees Global Enterprises.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think the most important thing to remember, and I think this is where us fans sometimes maybe get really annoyed with stuff. The Steinbrenner family and their investors are not going into their pockets. I mean, their personal money to pay for payroll. And to be honest with you, I don't even think George did. Like I said, there was no debt back then. Yeah. The revenue structure was totally different than it is now. I mean, a revenue sharing structure, what I'm saying. So now you have to pay these other things, right? You got to pay for Yes, you got to pay for revenue sharing, you got to pay for the stadium. And what is left, I mean, last year, and I've showed you the numbers, according to Forbes, they only made like $16 million.
Mm-hmm. Not as profitable as one would think.
Right. Now one thing I haven't got ever a clear answer, and this is just me speculating, so I'm just talking, out of my rear. I wonder if through accounting reasons, I do know there's plenty of accounting tax loopholes. Do they put family members on there as salary employees so they can skirt around other things? There's so many different ways. But I think what we need to realize as fans, and by the way, that number that John Heyman put out there from Forbes, which I believe it says $685 million, that's the projection from over here. Well, somebody, said to me the other day, well, they made $682 million in 2018. They have to be making more. Personally, I do think they're making more. But remember, we're still 3 years removed from COVID.
Yeah.
So those numbers could be skewed a little bit. I think the numbers probably, because they made that deal with Star Insurance.
Yes.
And I think that number is probably closer to 750 million. But like I said, it is still coming off from COVID. So there's definitely, lost potential income.
They lost about 150 million a year during COVID, right? And they lost more than any other team in baseball.
Right. And that's excellent point. I mean, like I said, again, people don't want to hear this, but during COVID, I think Forbes has the number at 190.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, this is the closing down of the stadium. This is 6 months, almost 5 months. Let's say from March to when they restarted this season to mid-July of lost ads on Yes Network.
And paying their abbreviated season salary with no fans coming to the stadium, no merch, no parking, nothing. You were paying out salaries to the players. And net loss altogether.
And what is amazing, from what you just said, what I find amazing is that this year's final bill, including the tax, is going to be about $332 million. So what you just said. So now, and I know what the fans think. Well, cry me a river. I don't want to hear about the Steinbrenners and making money. One thing that I could say is, and like I said, speaking of the people who know numbers, the Steinbrenner family are not filthy rich. Are they rich? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But they're not in the billion plus range of some of these owners.
They're not Steve Ballmer. So
exactly. I think if I had to guess, the Steinbrenners each are probably worth between 300 to 500 million apiece. Now it's split 4 ways. Remember that. And there's 18, I think, grandchildren, and then there's, of course, the 4. And Hank's share is still a share. His family are still getting a share of that money. One thing that's positive, and I know, I don't want to get into family business, but the 4 of them work very well together. There's no fractions of the family that is crazy. And I think what pretty much has been going on, and like I said, this is well documented. When George passed away, the Steinbrenners owned 71% of the Yankees. Lester Crown, who's been with George, who's still alive, by the way, and he's 98 years old.
Oh, man.
Yeah, came with George in 73. They own, the Crown family owns 13%. And then the rest is scattered owners. What the Steinbrenner family has done since George's death is sell off 9% of the team. Now, so if you look at the current value, and I think I just saw it the other day, Forbes has them listed at over $7 billion.
Yep.
But in the last 13 years, they have sold 9% to, I'm going to say, not to raise funds for the Yankees, but to put in their pocket. And that's how I think they got their money. I mean, between George's inheritance to them, I think they wanted a quick way to make some extra money. They have all these kids. But like I said, being worth $500 million is crazy amount of money. Crazy. But it's not having $10 billion of personal money.
That's true.
Okay.
And this is where I think the numbers get jumbled up for a lot of folks. I have a degree in economics. I also worked on Wall Street for a decade, so I'm very familiar with economic structure, debt, deficit, the whole thing, and I have a thorough understanding of how this stuff is manipulated and how it works, and fiduciary responsibility to your shareholders and everybody else, which is different, just like debt's different than deficit. Okay, but what you said too, it sometimes has felt and sometimes feels like you said too, this is where Hal, in my opinion, differs from Hank, the late Hank. And I don't know if memory serves me correctly, Brian Cashman had a trade set up for A-Rod to be traded to the Angels, and it was overruled by Hank Steinbrenner because he wanted to re-sign him to a 10-year deal, and he did. And he did in 2007.
After the 7th season, yes.
7th season. So, and he won MVP in 2007. They won the World Series in 2009, and so on. So that happened, and his legacy is his legacy. And this is where, not hearing the voice. We never heard the voice from Hank, but not hearing the voice from George and how much it differs from the voice of Hal, and the different way that they calculated things. Like, you knew right off the bat, I never felt that George didn't love owning this team. You know what I mean? And sometimes I feel like Hal's running it like a hedge fund. But
yeah, there's no question about that. And if you think about this, right? What I just mentioned, the 9% that was sold,
$600 million.
Yeah, I think that some of that percent was also gifted. And what I mean by gifted, Randy Levine owns a part of the Yankees. That is factual. Okay. Why? And I don't want to shift, make a U-turn over here, but I want to talk about Levine. Levine, if you're an old fan like me, know he was involved in New York City politics.
Yes, he was.
30 years now. Okay. At one point, he was called the second most powerful man in New York City. He is also a huge baseball fan, big time baseball fan. And he built a partnership with George, and he pretty much got the approval to build Yankee Stadium and everything. He's been also if you think about it, and this is not too long ago, we had the baseball strike or lockout, whatever you want to call it, 2 years ago. It was pretty funny. Right after Levine opened his mouth up, a couple days later, everything gets settled.
Yeah.
Rob Manfred sees Randy Levine as the great mediator between the players and the owners. So he was gifted, I think. I might be wrong. So if I don't want to be speaking out of turn, but he was, he owns ownership. And I believe that's the same thing with Brian Cashman. Think about this. Brian Cashman, yes, has been with the Yankees for 25 years. He signed a contract this time last year or around that time. Details were never released. Why would you want to work for the craziness? If you're Theo Epstein, where did he go? He left Boston to forge his legacy with the Cubs. He did something that no other GM did, right? Why are you staying here unless you have some skin in the game? That's my opinion. I think that Cashman has some skin in the game, whether it's even if it's a quarter, of a quarter of 1% that was promised to him or something, to stay here. And it's also known that Brian Cashman is the mediator between the siblings and Levine and Lon Trust and other people. So I wonder, this is just me, I wonder, is it even more crazy now than it was before, and that he's taking his eye off the prize, which is the field product, because he's dealing with this other stuff. Yeah,
Very good point. Because and a lot of folks, a lot of fans, and folks in the chat too, and justifiably so, they're frustrated about it does feel like Cashman might have taken his eye off the prize here, eye off the bullseye with the moves that he's made in the trade market and in free agency and so on and so forth. And they've kind of deviated from what they've normally do in the last couple of years, right? And now it's essentially the big prize and then generally nothing else or what. And I said this the other day too, it's different now. In 2009, they went on a spending spree, right? But 3 contracts now are probably equivalent of 6 contracts back then. Yeah. So just the way that it is. So I think it's unreasonable to expect the Yankees to just go out and do whatever they want whenever they want. So I think it's
unrealistic. This winter, I think, we talked about 2008. They spent a lot of money in 2008 in the winter to win one for George. And they spent a lot of money 13 into 14. That was the Tanaka, Beltran, Ellsbury, year. I think, I would be shocked. And I might eat my words. I would be shocked if they're not spending a lot of money this winter. And that is maybe, Yamamoto, could be Bellinger. I mean, everybody's talking about Soto. Okay, let's just put this out there. If you're the San Diego Padres and their owner is, I think he's the grandchild of Walter O'Malley. So he's been in the business. Are you going to sell your number one product, to bring fans in the middle of the winter? Now, if they offer him a ridiculous amount of money, he turns it down, there's an excuse. But until that bridge is crossed, to trade him, and then you got to remember there's going to be teams that are lined up. But anyway, getting back to the point, I think that Levine has told, Hal, that you need to make a bold statement this winter to get the juice of the fans, to get them ready to come to the ballpark, because if they're not coming to the ballpark, they're not spending and the ads not there. I think Yamamoto, like I said, I would be shocked if Yamamoto is not a Yankee because of that Japanese base. That's going to be extra revenue pulling it.
And I do think the Yankees have it within themselves to make a Soto trade. Now, again, he turned down, I think it was 14 years, $440 million.
Yeah, it was $440 million.
Which is a little over 30 a year. And I understand, okay, I get that. If I'm going to go for a Soto personally, I'll give him the 12-year deal. And I want to give him and he's a Scott Boras client. Boras likes his clients to be able to cash in twice if possible.
Yeah.
I'm going to give an opt-out, which is an incentive in my opinion, incentive for Boras to push him to sign a contract with the Yankees. I'll increase the AAV and give him an opt-out after 5 years. Let's just say it's, 12 years, 480 or whatever it might be, right? And give him an opt-out so he can come back out of the market at 30. And I'll take 5 years of prime Soto over anybody else right now.
Right.
And you combine that with prime Cole and prime Judge, the Yankees are in a position. Like, I do think the Yankees have within themselves to be creative and be aggressive at the same time this offseason.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I said, he has to just be on the market, until he's on the market, I want to go back to something else, though, and we're talking about the front office. Somebody my friends who follow me online, I've been following the draft since 1988, since I was maybe 12 years old, okay? That's when I started reading Baseball America. The Yankees draft. And people, who was it, Passon talking about the draft? I think he was on K Show and talking how bad it's been. It's been horrific. It took really until Cashman really fired everybody after 2018 and started to put together new scouts, new people in there. Damon Oppenheimer has still been, in place. They have been drafting better, and that goes also with pitching. The pitching has been a lot better when Matt Blake and other people have been put in place. Now I think he needs to do that with the hitting aspect. The hitting aspect is something that they need to do. And if he has that in him, then I think, there's a good chance that, we're going to see some improvements this year. Like I said, he has done it before. Mm-hmm. Let's see what happens after this, this audit, which I don't even know is even really taking place. Let's see what happens. Let's see if he puts these new coaches in place. Let's see what happens. If they're going to be firing people, because analytics needs to be the two places by far needs to be corrected this winter is analytics and the hitting aspect.
Yeah, and I mean, and to your point too, I like Sean Casey has a better feel for the game than Dylan Nelson did. Okay, that's an obvious fact. And getting him, they welcomed him back, but he hasn't officially signed back yet. Okay, but if he comes back, I do think, him getting a fresh start for a full entire season with the team, because he made some technical adjustments to DJ LeMahieu's swing, which improved his second half of the season significantly.
Yeah.
He helped Volpe. Volpe's also developing rookie, so I expect an improvement there. But the audit themselves, and I do think it's strategic, and we were talking about this earlier, I do think that they're not going to do it until the World Series is over, because a lot of Yankee fans tend to mentally check out after the World Series, so they might not be locked in on this stuff. And a lot of fans that, that not seeing the people that are in here, but a lot of fans that come onto the comment section, whatnot, they look for reasons to trash Cashman, to trash Hal on a regular basis. And I'm not saying it's everybody that does that, but people do that. So I think they're trying to figure out a way, and I could be wrong here, but I think they're trying to soften the blow for themselves.
Oh, no question. I mean, if you read Klappish's piece today on NJ.com, I don't even know if Cashman's going to speak this winter. I would be surprised. I think the press conference that he had in August when he claimed that the team was an embarrassment, I think that might be his last time he's talking possibly to a signing. I think what you're going to hear is at some point, Hal going on there. And like I said, I'm on record. I think he's going to promise the fans something. If we end up with Killmeyer, I'm going to throw out another name like Carlson, and we resign Frankie Montas, what is the point of watching games next year? Yeah. I mean, of course I'm going to watch it, but you're going to have an attitude watching this saying that's what they did. So I think, I texted to my, I tweeted my friends who are beat writers, and I said to them, first question should be, meaning Hal, are you planning to go under the tax next year? Or are you planning to spend? It's a cut and dry question. Because there have been years where you hear Hal talking about going under, we don't need to have this payroll. Just before I came on, I was just thinking this, and let's be honest, this year, at $334 million, and that's including, or $32 million, that's including the tax. Hal crossed the Rubicon, right? He went over $300 million. To go now next year and go under the cap, which is $237 million.
37, and then 93 is the Cohen threshold, or 97 is the Cohen
Yeah.
threshold. And at that point, you're dropping 10 points in the draft. You're forfeiting international money.
Right. Are you planning to lower, the payroll that much?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be very questionable to see if he actually does that. I mean, you're going to go from this year, like you just said, he was at, I think, 200. The final number, I think, is 298. I believe. Like okay. And you're going to come down $60 million and you expect to improve this team? I can't see that.
No. You're going to have to trade Torres. You're going to have to make and I've said, and people think I'm crazy when I suggest trading Torres. I wanted him traded like 2 years ago because he's the only guy that has trade value. And he's an area that we can personally replace his offense, improve his defense, and maybe get us some pitching here, which we need. We don't only need hitting; we need pitching too. Okay?
I got criticized today. I think I proposed a trade, and it was piggybacking off Joel Sherman's Tanner Scott. Mike Axis wrote a great thing today talking about, that's by the way, follow him on Patreon. He did River Avenue Blues, probably one of the better guys to follow, straight down the middle. Marlins have 4 left-handed pitchers.
Mm-hmm.
People think that Torres's value is 3 times more than what he's got. 1 year of control at $15 million.
Mm-hmm.
And he, let's be honest, on another team, I don't know what his final OPS is. I'm going to be kind and say it was 800. I don't even think it was even 800. I think it was 790, right?
High sevens.
Yeah. What on another team that's good? Where is he on the Rangers? Where is he on the Phillies? Where is he on these other? When you are the best of the baddest, that's not really where you want to be. Now, don't get me wrong. If they decide to keep him and say, what the future is, and that's fine. But you got to remember, they are loaded in the minor leagues with middle infielders. And when I mean loaded, they're loaded.
Yep.
What are you telling them? Think about it. If you sign Torres, which a lot of people want to do, to a 6, 7, 8 year deal, those prospects on the farm kind of lose value.
Yeah.
Because you're not bringing them up. You're basing them what they are on the farm, and they're only going to be so much on that. They're only going to go so high. And teams are going to hold that. They're going to hold you hostage by saying, you know what? Where are you playing him? You got to move him. So
you're going to take him out.
And I'm not even saying it's right to to keep. I mean, if they want to keep him next year, fine. Then you may get the draft pick. But if they trade him this winter, which I think there's a good chance,
I do too.
It is what it is.
I agree. And it makes sense, and I've said this, like, I'm not just trading him to clear payroll. I'm trading him to get value back because he's the only guy here that we can move where we can extract some kind of value in return. And like the pitching, even if it's, let's just say Braxton Garrett from the Marlins, we'd have to add a prospect to Torres, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah, you would have to add something big.
Yeah, we use a control. That's for a pitcher on the cheap. That's a hell of a lot more valuable than 1 year Torres. So, I'll add a Johnny Brito. I'll add a Trey Sweeney to it. Like, I'll sweeten the pot because, like you said, he's blocking like 6 other infielders.
Their system, especially at rookie level this year,
mm-hmm.
I mean, they had 5 guys who were 17 and 18 years old who, mm-hmm. BA, that was the other thing. What's the promise? BA has been, Baseball America has been pretty much very negative on the Yankees system for years. That's changing. They have 7 guys in the top 100. Mm-hmm. The problem is, 7 of them, 5 of them are bats. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how that goes next year. But and that's, I don't know Arias is on that list. He might be. Off the top of my head, I kind of forgot who's on the list, but I think he might be on the list. But they have definitely their farm is going to be even better, I think, this time next year. They've been drafting and develop. One thing I could say is that they're drafting pitchers, and it's called build a pitcher. They're drafting these pitchers and building them, and then coming out like in the past 2 years. Look at the pitchers they have drafted and now are in the top whatever. You have Will Warren, you have Drew Thorpe, who just won Pitcher of the Year. You have Chase Hampton, right? You have Richard Fitz. What's that?
Clayton Beeter also.
Yeah, you traded for Beeter. So you have these guys, and that's right. Beeter was a relief pitcher with the Dodgers.
Yep.
He had 165 strikeouts this year in AAA. Yeah. So that's why I think deals would take place this winter, because they have so many pitchers, not on on the major league level, but on the minor league level, and that goes down there. I mean, it is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, I'm not even talking about the relief pitchers. They have a couple of giants, a couple of guys who are 6'8". Jack Neely is one of them. Danny Watson, I think, is another one. They're 6'7", 6'8". Outstanding numbers at AA. These people are knocking down doors. So I could see them, not even get a relief. Maybe I think they do get a left-handed relief pitcher, but besides that, I don't think they do anything else. They bring up those kids.
I would agree, and I mean this is where they can, preserve revenue and be more aggressive in starting pitching, or whatever they want to do. If they want to go with the youth movement with the bats, invest in pitching. You want to go youth movement with the 100%. Pitching, bats, complement it, right? And then it provides them some balance. Because I do think, and to your point earlier about analytics, I think in some cases, particularly offensively, some of them have made, in certain areas, have lost the feel for the game because of their obsession with analytics. Like, it's kind of become gospel in certain areas, and I do think some people have gotten away from the feel of it. Like, we were never taught that growing up. We lost the feel of fundamental baseball.
Analytics is part of the game. I think there are some teams. I was talking to somebody. I think I posted this too. The amount of college kids who are looking for an intern with the Tampa Bay Rays is phenomenal. They could have, from what I've told, close to over 100 interns working for them in the analytic department. And I know that the Yankees have supposedly a big one, but you got to remember that's a paid department where they're getting paid for it. These are not in, but it's like a badge of honor getting a job with the Rays and learning their craft. Now, I'm not saying analytics is everywhere in every job and everything. Don't get me wrong. My problem is I think that the Yankees analytics by Michael Fishman is old, outdated, or not read correctly. It seems like for everything they're trying to get ahead of the game, they're taking 2 steps back.
Yeah, it feels like it's gospel there at the expense of a lot of other areas of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, you heard Joe Girardi talking about it, and you see other people saying there are people in the dugout giving high fives. They're not even part of the coaching staff, and I think that and like I said, I'm not knocking the analytics. It's going to be there, but it's to a point where if you're getting overloaded and you're thinking about 7 different things. The human brain let puts you on the spot, right? Can you do 7 different things? We're telling you to do this and this, and try to hit a 97-mile fastball.
Have a hair of a split second to respond to the pitch.
Yeah,
you got to calculate all that stuff.
And I think where we see it, and this is no offense, but I think we see it where a lot of our younger fans, see it, the numbers, and said it has to be done because the numbers tell you that. There's a human factor in this. And I forgot. There's a great story. I forgot the player, and I wish I remembered him. And he was with maybe you remember, with the Baltimore Orioles. His wife had triplets. Do you remember the player? I'm trying to remember. It was back in the late 90s, but the joke was he was batting 200, like 210 at home. And on the road, he was batting .340. And the reason was he was getting a good night's sleep on the road. He was getting no sleep at home.
Look at that.
I forgot who it was, but it was a great story. I forgot who I don't know if it was Tyler Kepler. I think maybe he was the one who I heard the story from. But he was getting a better sleep on the road, and he was performing. That's the human factor that I think a lot of people just don't understand.
No, and I think finding the right balance, and the balance I think is different for every team and different environment. Playing in New York is not the same thing as playing in Colorado. It's a different monster here, and it has to be factored into the puzzle and in their own way. So finding the right balance that works for them here in New York has to be discovered. And if they need to either move on from Mike Fisher or complement him with some more brains, like more suitable brains, and that's what they need to do. Because we obviously, at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're taking a step forward. And the only way we're going to catch up to teams like the Rays and the Baltimore Orioles and some of these other teams that use these weapons very effectively is to get better in areas where we're way behind them. And in this case, it's analytics, right?
Yeah, I mean, this winter, I mean, like I said, and I think you said the same thing. The season is still going on.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me. I think a lot of people don't understand what the calendar is like. If the season ends, for the most part, you have October, November, and December. You're off. Now, don't get me wrong. There are individual players, and because you got to remember also, I don't know if the number is 20% or 25% who are going to be free agents every year, right? Yep. So you're waiting to get a job. But like I said, October, November, December, you're off. Could you play? Some of them play winter ball, of course. But talk to me in January where we are. Are they? A lot of people have been saying these hitters should go to Driveline, especially the older hitters. That's what the Dodgers did to catch them. Great idea, fine. But to expect it on on the 20th of October, I don't think you're going to get it right then and then. You're right. I mean, you might let's go back and let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and let's see what happens in February, and let's ask when they come into camp, what did you do this winter to improve? Because we might be surprised. You know what I mean? I don't think there's going to be a post saying, "Oh, the Yankees just hired 6 new." Because I'll be honest, and I'm somebody who really loves the draft. It was shocking to see those very quiet Cashman put these people in place. The 2019 draft, which is the Volpe draft. Ken Waldachuk was in that draft. Some other, I think it was some other people in that draft. And then you had the 2020 draft, which was Austin Wells.
Yeah.
And some other players. It was only a 5-round draft. But you could see that there was a method to the madness. And then the 21 draft, the 22 draft, and the 23 draft, so much more talent. They're pulling that talent out of them, which was 20 years of non-existence. They will be drafting these players, and don't get me wrong, I think you're, let's say, an older fan, you'll remember, they draft great relief pitchers.
Yeah, they do.
Right?
I mean, develop them, they acquire them. To me, that's one of their strong points.
Absolutely. David Robinson, the other Warren, what was his name? Betances, right? I'm off the top of my head. What was the other Warren they had?
Adam Warren.
Adam Warren, right? They get, they have been, but no hitters, right? You're talking about 20 years of no hitters, and no starting pitching drafting, and now this year, I'm going to tell you, I'm speechless on the amount of talent they have on the pitching side, and I'm talking about starters in the AA, AAA, and high A level. And to be honest, BA thinks that the kids in the Florida State League who are rookie ball have the potentials to be top pitchers, especially the left-hander. I think Henry Milone. I mean, think about that. That's quite amazing. So just give it time. That's
And
what
we haven't heard this type of recognition in a while from the Yankees. Like we haven't heard them say the farm hasn't been this deep in a while, right? In a lot of different areas. So it's very encouraging to hear. And I gotta, and I like to give credit where it's due too. Cashman played no small part in this. He played a big part in helping this draft happen. The last couple of drafts happen. So, and so, you doing okay on time, by the way?
yeah, let's another
Okay.
10 minutes. That's fine.
All right. Just wanted to see if you get your view on this in terms of draft picks. Like, I don't think a salary cap's going to happen. I don't think the union will overflow.
No.
But a salary floor, maybe. Okay. And they're putting together this economic reform committee right now for the next CBA in hopes that they can get 23 out of 30 votes from
Yeah.
owners to put together some proposal for a salary floor. Now, which would essentially require teams at the bottom who the recipients of revenue sharing to
Right.
spend such and such amount of money. Do you think tying in things like a forfeiture of draft picks makes sense if they don't spend this money, right?
That's a great, that's a great question and a great idea, by the way. That I think that we saw this confusion with the international free agency, and there was going to be a commission on this, and it's either prolonged, pushed aside, or whatever. The floor that you're talking about, I just don't see teams actually. Yeah, you needed 23 teams, I believe, right? Like you said. I just think there are too many teams that just like being where they are, and they will continue to be in that group. You'll see it in a few weeks when we see the compensation picks, and these go to the lower revenue teams.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, think about it right now. How great pretty much the past 15 years the Rays are. Well, they get a pick every year.
Yep.
Right. Whether they're still, they may finish first or second, they're getting a comp pick because they are on that lower end. The A's, last year was surprising. The Mariners were on there.
Yep.
Cleveland, Pittsburgh,
Baltimore.
Oh my gosh, yes. Baltimore, yes.
They're cheap states when it comes to spending.
Which is crazy because I don't want to.
Angelo's family.
The father used to spend the money, if you remember. Albert Bell, Palmero, Alamo. And then their kids took over and they wanted the money.
Yeah.
So we're kind of lucky. So far the Steinbrenners have been all right. I tell my friends, go to Baltimore and see a family that took over that you would lose your effing mind.
Yeah.
Right? So you have these teams now getting these extra picks. I think, they talk about, they always try to scare. I think, the next CBA, which is, I believe, in 27, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if we all just stay status quo. Yeah, and we just raise the number so much right now. I'm going back to, I went back to 10 minutes ago. Hal crossed the Rubicon. He went over 300 million. To cut back now and start complaining about all the stuff, what are you telling the fans? Now, personally, this is just me personally, I don't think he will go to that third tier. I think up to $40 million more where he doesn't lose the draft pick. I think next year's number, and that's another thing that fans need to know. I don't know the exact date. I don't know. I think it's January 15th. I might be wrong. But MLB, meaning the commissioner, usually gets teams to submit what they project as their payroll. We don't know about it. It's always confidential. But MLB needs to know how much money and where it's coming from for you to produce your team for next year. So
their actuaries need to do some work, right? So
Right. So if the A's say I'm only spending $50 million, how are you getting that $50 million? Right. I mean, we know how we're getting that. For the Yankees, I'm going to believe that the number for next year is somewhere it could be 275 to 295 million. So he could cross the third. He could, but most likely, I think he stays under 277. I think that could be done. Okay, and getting players, because I think they're going to let a bunch of players go via non-tender.
Yeah, I mean, I think like 90% of the ARB class is going to get non-tendered. And I think the guy's not going to get non-tendered or might get traded as Torres. So the rest of them, they already have like 60 plus million coming off the books. They can add another 20 here.
Absolutely.
And then they have money to play with and still be at that threshold. And if they trade Torres, you're freeing up 15. And if you're trading him for a controllable pitcher, you use some of those prospects that we have to make a deal like that possible, because you're keeping the payroll down. And then you can get a guy like Yamamoto. Then you can get a guy like Soto. So like those types of moves make these bigger ones possible.
I have a spreadsheet that I have two numbers. I have the number with Torres and the number without. The number without Torres I have is at 17.7 million. And that's I think, and they're at, I believe, 196. So they could have somewhere between $50 to $70 million to add. So whoever they get this winter, they should have enough. And I think there's going to be a trade, whether it's, I said the Cardinals, because they match up so well. I mean, it doesn't take a brain scientist. I get a lot of Cardinal fans coming to me saying that their players are worth X amount of money. Yeah, but you guys need arms. You're not going to sign 7 or 8 pitchers, and they need 7, 8 pitchers.
And this is where we can potentially get a guy like Brendan Donovan. I like Carlson, but Donovan infield and the outfield. We have pitching to give them, and he's got like 4 more years on the cheap. So,
yeah, I mean, if you did it, I think you could do. I mean, it was floated in. He's coming off Tommy John injury, so there's still a question mark. But if you thinking about Clark Schmidt, maybe in another a lesser known prospect for Donovan, that's a fair deal. I mean, the numbers match up. They both have 4 years of control. Yeah, they both make little money. But I think that the Twins have lefty bats. That they may look into. I'm watching the Diamondbacks. The Diamondbacks have lefty bats too. So I think something gets done. It might be not to our liking, and I say that all the time. The players that Cashman might get this winter might be not to our liking. But if and that's the other thing, is like people are like, oh, stay away from Cody Bellinger, right? Oh God Almighty! But if Cody Bellinger got traded here in July and was performing, everybody's attitude would be changed. Yeah. Let's see what numbers are before we go crazy, and see where it can be, what they get, because there's only so many things. If they don't get Bellinger or Soto this winter, like, who's the other bat?
I mean, then you have to honestly, you got to go after like Jung-Hoo Lee of South Korea. Then you got to trade for one of these Diamondbacks outfielders, or Donovan, or like Nick Gordon or somebody like from Minnesota.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about him. I mean, this is a name that my friends, cannot stand, is Max Kepler. Max Kepler. Yeah. Kepler is probably at $10 million to the Twins is an asset. So they'll pick up an option and either keep him or they'll trade him for something. Now, we may not like that name, but think about it. If Max Kepler was on this year's Yankee team, he'd be playing it all the time in the outfield.
Yeah, better than Millie McKinney, better than Bowers, better than everybody that we had. So,
and that's the thing. You just said, I think Cashman fell into the trap where I want to be like the Rays, find these hitters, he does a great job, and think about it. In the past 2 years, and I was going to put out a tweet about this. I'm really looking forward to seeing whoever it is, the pitcher that was released by another team, that he finds this winter. I mean, past two, they had Lukey, or was it Lukey, right? 2 years ago, right?
Yep.
And then this year was Hamilton, right?
Hamilton.
You're getting these guys for nothing. Hamilton has a 12 value right now. I'm not saying to trade him, but if somebody comes to you, I'm not going to say no if the offer is kind of fair. You know what I mean? So you're finding these players, which, and like we talked about a few minutes ago, Their pen is an area of strength.
And
They
he's not
have,
until 2029.
yeah, he is
5 years of control on the cheap.
right.
5.
And people don't understand control. I mean, and Cashman, the way Cashman thinks, Cashman is still very old school. He believes control of the player is by far the most important thing, even more than how the player performs.
Yeah.
Because if, like you just said, he has 5 years of control.
Scott Efrost, 4.
There's so much that can be done where he might suck for a year or two, but you still have additional years. Yeah. Now, some people think that's a fault of his. To me, I'm on the fence with it. Middle out some days, but control is how he still evaluates players. And that's how he when he goes into trades, he brings it up. And I think a lot of the modern GMs, the younger GMs, don't value control like the older GMs do.
Yeah, and people can call it dumpster diving, but this is also a mathematical way of offsetting the big expensive contracts.
Oh, absolutely.
Being able to stay within your parameters in the payroll.
Right. I mean, there's only about, and I say this all the time, there's 30 teams, only about 10 teams that Cashman will work with, because these are GMs that work with him. He'll work with, of course, St. Louis. He'll work with Seattle.
Marlins.
He'll work with the Diamondbacks. He has worked with the Reds. He's worked with the Twins. I can't see him working, White Sox, that was prior to this, new regime. There's some teams that he just doesn't trade with. I mean,
True.
They tried to get Soto 2 years ago. Mike Rizzo wanted no part of any of the Yankees prospects.
Yeah, didn't like Dominguez, didn't like Volpe. So, now, to your point too, the GM of the Padres, he has different needs. He might value them differently, obviously.
Right.
So going to San Diego would be drastically different than your package would have been going to Washington.
I tell you this, Yankee fans may not want to hear this, and I know they're playing right now. And like I said, I live in the Philly market, and I have a lot of friends who are Philly guys. And what they're doing with their ownership, what they're doing with Dombrowski's a Hall of Famer. It would not, if Soto does go in the market, say he goes on the market, I think Dombrowski and Middleton, who's the owner, would not hesitate at all to trade their top two pitching prospects, which is Painter and Abel. And both of their values are over 70. So you may get two guys and the Padres need pitching. I don't think, and he will pay. He paid Harper. He paid the other guys. If I'm a Yankee fan and I'm thinking I'm going to think about getting Soto, if the Phillies get into a bidding war, they will win. They just have more to offer in terms of young, controllable, elite pitching.
And Dombrowski's notorious for being fearless. To part with, he parted a Hall for Chris Sale. Okay, he has the balls. He's not afraid to forfeit.
Cabrera, do you remember the Cabrera deal?
Yeah.
The Cabrera deal back in the day, when he went over there. I mean, think about it. The Marlins back in '97 put that together.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back even further. I don't know how old you are, but let's go back to '92 and '93 when he was with the Expos.
Oh, man.
So he's putting the Expos team back together. Listen to the builds he did. He's done the Expos. He's done the Marlins. He's done the Tigers. He's done the Red Sox. And now he's doing the Phillies. He's a Hall of Fame GM. People don't want to, say all this. He's a Hall of Fame GM, an elite GM and an owner who wants to win now. So, like I said, and my friends were texting me and saying, if you think you're going to get Soto, if he's on the market, think again, because Dombrowski is fearless. He will get, if the owner proves, of course, whatever the salary would be. So you're going to have to do that. So I don't want to say that's why I'm not even really thinking about Soto. I want to be realistic to see what possibly they could do this winter. And I think, like I said, Soto or Bellinger, Yamamoto, and two lefty bats would be, I think, the best we could probably get now. Now, could Cashman surprise us?
Sure.
I
mean, my two or three lefty bats will lengthen the lineup.
Yeah.
I need to find people to give protection to Judge, Stanton, and Volpe. Okay.
Right.
To let these guys maximize their talents and lengthen this lineup in such a way that there's not a break for pitchers.
Right.
So, and we're missing pieces. We need that. Missing
Yeah,
pieces.
I mean, that's what I said. I'm not going to go crazy on the 20th of October. Come to me on,
Yeah.
February 10th, and let's see where we are. And even past that, because if you notice that there are trades going up to March, because there's some names. I mean, Gomez, the pitcher who came up, this has to be on the 40 man. I mean, excuse me, obviously on a major league roster. Excuse me, he has to be on a major league roster. So you're going to see some trading and stuff probably up to the end of March. So what we have: November, December, January, February, March. We have 5 months really before we have a finished product. So
it's going to be a while.
Chill out a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, and just folks, like, the day after the World Series starts the 5-day window for teams to re-sign their existing free agents, and then after that 5-day period, then free agents can sign with other teams. After that, then things kind of start. But we already know that the momentum really starts to pick up at the winter meetings. You might have an outlier here, a big signing here and there. Winter meetings tends to be the first step, and then GM meetings happen before the winter meetings. But it's going to be drips and drabs for a while of things that happen. You may wake up one day and say, wow, they just did that. They did this. Yeah, that's just the way that it is. So as much as I hope the Yankees are proactive and at the very least get one big check off the board, like get a Yamamoto. If you're going to get him, do what you did to CC Sabathia. Once free agency started, they were at his door, knocking on his door. Right?
I'll tell you that one of my friends on here, Mike, and he knows who he is. We were talking today about Yamamoto, and the reason why he would come here because he wants to be. You kind of have that feeling, you kind of have that feeling that he wants to be here. I think there was a rumor report or whatever that San Francisco is going to be very active. Let me tell you something. Cashman going to Japan on the anniversary, and not walking away with Yamamoto. And this is a little different than Ohtani, who it was even back then. I remember in 2017, there was some whispers he wanted no part of the East Coast. The feelers are out there. I have people who are scouts, put it that way, they are scouts, telling me that he wants to play in New York. So I think there was, whether it's the Mets, whether it's the Yankees, and what I think is they're going to put out a number. I don't think it's going to be as crazy as some people say, but I think it's going to be a little above what Tanaka got, which was like 7 years, 155 million. I think 7 years, about 175 is about right. Yeah, I think about that, and I think that will probably, get his services. And then you have a start. Then you have additional pitchers. Then you want to trade Cortez. You want to trade King. You want to trade Schmidt. I'm not saying I'm trading them all. Let's see if you put them on the market. Who's coming to you?
Get this big piece in the house first.
So and that you got to remember that window is December the 1st to December the 31st. Yep. So it will be done before New Year's Day. And my guess, if I remember, because I remember I was coming back from a cruise, it's going to be probably after Christmas. It's going to be like a late Christmas present that they get him. And I think after that, but in the meantime, if Soto is on the market, my thing with Bellinger is this, and I think you would understand, longtime fan. The dad played for the Yankees, right?
Mm-hmm.
And won 2 World Series. Yankees love telling stories, right? They love telling stories. And I think if the number is between 150 to 180, I think they would entertain that because, listen, even if he doesn't play center field, Rizzo is gonna leave after this year. They just saw him at the first base. And another thing is, and let's be honest too, and a lot of other fans, well, if you sign Bellinger, you're not getting Soto. You can have both because you're clearing the money of Rizzo next year.
Yep.
So the money is actually going to be there, and plus the numbers are going to rise. So let's take day by day, cross bridge by bridge, and see what happens. Now, if Bellinger is asking for 8 years, 240, I'm not touching that. I'm not going to touch that. But I think this is a lot. This process is going to be a lot like Rodon last year, because if you remember, there was rumors he wanted 8 years, $220 million, and then he came back to earth. And I'm not saying that's after this crappy year he had, but still it was 160. I think you're going to, I mean, because I think there's only 3 teams bidding on him. It's going to be the Yankees, the Giants, and the Cubs.
I would agree.
And, there's some rumors that the Padres or Toronto, I think he wants to play for the Yankees. And I think he grew up in the Yankees clubhouse. I think it's just coming on the number. But like I said, if the Giants offer $220 million, $240 million, the Yankees are not going there, and they'll go through other corridors and stuff. But let's see what happens first. I think Yamamoto is by far the number one thing they need to take care of, because 100%. From that you could build other trades.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. The platform, and he's 25.
And he's 25. Yes. So, I think, as long as, the only thing I'm kind of worried, I know they only pitch once a week in Japan, but they do throw a lot. They throw more pitches. I think he threw 116 last night. It was over 2 nights ago for a playoff game. But the thing is, too, like, we go back to it. The Yankees literally have 5 arms. They have Beater, they have Will Warren, they have Thorpe, they have Fitz, and who's the 5th one? Well, Brock Selvage is one of them. And they have Brito, and they have Vasquez. So if you're talking about 7, 8 arms, that could be Chase Hampton, that was the other one. So they have those arms that at any point in them, like somebody says to me, if you get 2 out of those 8 to be major league pitchers, you're happy.
Yeah. And
they already have 2, because Brito and Vasquez are major league pitchers.
Yeah. And you got King.
Yeah.
And if he somehow becomes part of the rotation, like you said too, it gives them the flexibility to move somebody like Cortez, who's got 2 more years left.
Yeah, Cortez and King have 2 more years of control. So it's going to be, I personally, I think they would move Nestor in any deal. I think the thing with King is, I believe he's 28. Okay. He could be someone, and I don't want to compare him to, a guy like Corey Kluber, but I'm talking about a pitcher who in their late 20s finally found themselves and then took it to the next level. I mean, his pitching this 10 starts or so was quite impressive. Now, like I said, I'm not saying that he's Kluber, okay? I don't know. But I'm saying he's someone who is in their late 20s, finally figure out how to pitch, and then takes it. So you probably hold on to him.
But that said, I would not hesitate to not move him for Juan Soto. If they ask,
that's the only person, Yeah,
and we have Luis Hill too coming back from Tommy John too.
Right. I mean, if I would be okay. I mean, I don't know how to say. See this, but again, this is the thing. The Yankees' best offer, really, a blowaway offer would be King and Schmidt, right? 2 major league pitchers. You're talking right off the top, that's over a 50 value, right?
Yeah.
Right? But the Phillies, those 2 pitchers who are, I think, the 20-something and 41st player in the top 100, their value is over 70.
Mm-hmm.
So even if you go there are still teams who could probably top that. And personally, I don't think Brian Cashman would offer both, 2 major pitchers in one deal. So it's going to be quite interesting to see what takes place. I think we're going to see, I don't know how smart the people in San Diego is, but I think if he puts out the telling sign is this. So everybody wants to know if Soto is going to be traded this winter. If their owner publicly says there's an offer and Soto's camp rejects it, then it gives it a great excuse to trade him.
Yeah.
Because if not, the fans of San Diego are going to be like, what? You didn't even offer him money? You know what I mean? If they offer him, now remember, they were going to offer Judge $420 million, I believe. If they offer Soto, say 12 years, $500 million, and he says no, then by all means, I think he gets traded. Personally, what I think happens, I think it's like an Ohtani situation. I think they keep him this winter. They start the season with him, and they get cold feet at the deadline. I think this is just going to be like an Ohtani situation because I think they're afraid of the backlash. Does he have more? Does Prell have more stones than the GM of the Angels? Maybe, and even next year, I think even if they trade him in July next year, the whole will be more surprising to people than what his value currently is.
Yeah, and will he want to come back to a team that's going to be without Snell, without Hader? The team's going to be much worse than it was before.
Right.
The other question to ask from San Diego.
I don't know how close his bond is with those other guys. I don't know how close his bond is with Manny, Tatis, Bogarts.
To me, I think he'd be a perfect mentor for somebody like Jason Dominguez here.
Oh, I mean, you're talking about an old world player, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're talking the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
And I think every Yankee fan dreams about having him there. I get a lot of heat saying, "Well, you don't want Soto. You don't want Soto." The difference is if Soto's a free agent, we're all on the same page, right?
Mm-hmm.
But Soto right now is currently a product of another team. So that other team has to let that product go. And then when they do let them go, they have the option where to send him. So you have more obstacles in your way than when he's just on the market and it's you and the agent. That's what I think, fans need to realize. Because I hear, oh, yeah, we're going to get Soto this winter, But what do you tell the fans in San Diego?
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, like I said, we get a good winter with some exciting news, that gets us some juice for the spring.
No, that's good points, man. I appreciate you coming on and giving us
Anytime.
more into the Yankees economic situation because I think it's not talked about often enough. And there's a lot of misinformation. We've talked about this too. That's being spread out there. And the problem with that, in my opinion, is it goes to one area and then it's spread to 10 different other areas. And then you have this propaganda machine going everywhere. And there's so many people that are pissed off at the wrong people. And I'm like, what?
I'll tell you this. I will leave you with this. All right. And this is how I feel myself. You got to remember that you can't, first of all, you can't control how other people's money. You can't spend other people's money.
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody who has ever, I know members of the Yankees front office follow me because they've DM'd me. Okay. And you can't spend other people's money. Okay. Now I get that. Now, basic math, you have to understand that a lot of that, there's money. There is the 10% of the revenue sharing. There's the debt to the stadium. There is the Yes Network. And then there's other things. There's the Dominican Academy. There's minor league teams. There is these coaches. There are scouts. They're paying. Whenever they say their revenue is, if you just do 40%, if they're spending 40% every year, it's probably the best you're going to get. I know fans don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear that's the best you're going to get. The Yankees are a $7 billion team. They should be spending $450 million a year. Yeah, it doesn't happen, right? And you're going to be screaming at a cloud and just wasting time. You got to be realistic about this. And the realistic is, like we just said before, if they're spending between $275 and $300 million next year, it's probably the best you're going to get. You don't want to hear that? I'm sorry, but that's what it is. Hal Steinbrenner is not worth $16 billion. It's not Stephen Cohn, all right? It is what it is.
Yeah. It's a good point, man. Really, really good point. And Bobby, man, thanks so much, man, for coming on, man.
Listen, I had a great time. Hopefully we talk again. And when we do talk again, we have new additions.
Yes, indeed. So let's wait until we get a couple new additions and have you back on and we can celebrate them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And thank your viewers. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. Have a great night. I'll talk to you next time.
Take care now, buddy. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, gang. So that was Bobby Milone. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. Shout out to everybody in the chat, by the way. I'll keep on for a couple more minutes so I can give you my undivided attention. But I wanted to have that conversation with Bobby because there's a lot of stuff. And again, I say this a lot of these things, but a lot of times it also falls on deaf ears. I'm not saying you guys and gals, but a lot of folks, and you know that people pound me on a regular basis, and they'll call me Cashman lover, Boone lover, and blah blah blah. But there's certain things that they're out of their control that are primarily other people's wheelhouse, and then this goes to the finances and the economics and how the stadium is financed and all this stuff. And there's a lot of big expenditures that eat right into the Yankees' revenues. And I wanted to get him on here to kind of clarify that a little bit more, so that you have another voice communicating the same type of message that I'm communicating to you. Because, like I said to you folks, I want you to have the full story, not just one side of it. Okay, and which is why I also welcome differing opinions, because it elevates the conversation. But I also, I think it's important to make sure the facts are the facts, and that no matter what the opinions are, we both have the facts in front of us, and then we can formulate whatever the hell opinions are on the facts. But at least we know what the story is. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you. Shout out to my consiglieres. And here we got NFE. Here we got CIBE. We got Mr. Lonely Soul. What's happening? That's a cool name. I saw Texas Buckeye. He has to the Hawaiians here. NFE. I saw Tats from Pinstripes. Welcome. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming on. Jace Villanueva Saez. Davey. The whole Cosa Nostra's here. Texas is here. Man, we got the whole crew here. Welcome again. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. Again, I wanted to get some more clarity in your hands, some more information. And this guy, and again, he has the inside scoop from a lot of Yankees people. That's why I brought him on. So that's why I'm not just saying here like I have people who whatever my sources are, like some other people say. I wanted to get the source on here so you can hear the message from the source. So Juan Soto alone is not moving this team, Miss Malone. You got to write that. They need to, if they have the resources, if they have the ability to do it, and they do, they need to do more than Juan Soto. So we love having you on, NFE, man. Appreciate you. And tomorrow night is open panel, gang. So Costa Nostra, if you're around, hop on. Tats, if you're around, hop on. Let's get into it. And by the way, shout out to Tats and NFE. They had a great conversation this morning, great live stream this morning talking about the Yankee baseball postseason, retiring numbers, a lot of great conversation, a lot of food for thought that makes you think, okay, in ways that you don't normally think. So I thank you guys for a freaking awesome conversation. And you even made me think about just the value of retiring numbers and potentially unretiring numbers. And that part of the conversation I really, really love. But I loved your feedback, both of you, on what to do this offseason and how it pertains to all these other things. And again, doing it in New York is different than doing it in other areas. So great job this morning, guys, NFE and Tats. Man, really great job. Great job. It was freaking awesome. So, and I'd like to have you guys on so that we can do this morning. If you guys are on tomorrow, hop on tomorrow night. Get your feedback, get your insights, share your knowledge, let everybody else train their brains. So, who about a trade for Gorman and Donovan? If you can trade for Nolan Gorman and Brandon Donovan, you'd have to give up a lot of damn pitching, you see, but that's a worthwhile thing to pursue, because you could put Gorman in the outfield, Donovan in the infield. Again, they're both cheap, controllable for next bunch of years. It leaves you the flexibility to move guys like Torres and to do other things. And again, like that's an intriguing possibility. You'd have to give up some pitching, yes. Cardinals need pitching, yes. But again, Gorman by himself, I wouldn't do. I would do Donovan by himself, but Gorman and Donovan, intriguing, very intriguing. All right, and if you're good, man, it'll be good to have you on. If we do, what do we got? JJ saying if we do compete with, all right, so we do compete with Steve Cohen. Yankees need to be sold to Elon Musk. Nah, not Elon Musk. Not him. Nah. We can. Um, they can't outbid Steve Cohen, man. No doubt about it. No doubt about it, man. Yeah, I mean, he spoke some hard truth that some fans need to hear, and that's the thing. Like, I'm not always gonna come on and tell people what they want to hear, especially if it's not true. I'd rather you get the accurate information. That way, you can form an educated and a much informed opinion. Okay, that way you have better. I want you folks to have a better understanding of what we're talking about, so we can have better conversations. And again, even if we don't agree on everything, that's totally cool. But at least we know what the hell we're talking about, right? So, and that's why I want to have folks like Bobby Milone here. It was a great conversation. I thank Bobby again for coming on. That was an awesome. And I learned from folks that come on here. I learned from Bobby today. I learned from all the other folks that come on. I learned from Tats. I learned from NFE. I learned from all of you that come on and talk on the live streams. So, don't believe in retiring them. Yeah, and this is. I mean, I think there's got to be a long. I think there's got to be more to retiring numbers. I think it should be harder to do. So, and like the impact, I mean, you got to play here for a while and have an impact. Like Bernie, I was for. Like the only, I mean, Judge is a number I would consider retiring. Cole, if he continues doing what he's doing, is a number I would consider retiring. Um, Brett Gardner, I would consider retiring. I would probably not text Teixeira. I like Teixeira. I would not retire A Rod's number. And but again, you know, to me that should be a great honor having your number retired, being in the Canyon of Heroes with the Yankees. So like, you know, in Monument Park, that's a great honor. You know, servicing that, yes, it is Texas. You know, yes, it is. I don't know if they're screw CWE. I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't worry about that much. Try and make some references and lectures. I love it. Dev, thank you so much for a year. Our anniversary, man, 1 year. Congratulations, Dev. We love you, man. Our thoughts and prayers going out to you and your family. You're going through a tough time right now, so please, you know, please accept our thoughts and our love and our prayers to you. BJJ references. I'm telling you, man, throw in an Americana, right? Uh, Figure out how to toss in a north south. Let people think like, what the hell is he talking about? And only you and I know it, and we're laughing at other people. You're like, what the fuck? Like, don't worry, don't worry. Huh? Yeah. Trade for Kyle Finnegan from the Nationals. Another intriguing name. You seen? I like when people put out the ideas. I like when people put out the ideas, man. Numbers retired, not but honoring their numbers. Yeah, I get it, David. That makes sense too. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. Same. Yeah. Oh, sending all love to Dev. Sending all love to Dev and his family. Yeah, same here, Tats. Like, yeah, I love Tex too. I love his impact here. But again, to me, he was like kind of like one of the big hired guns to come here, and he had some injuries and all this stuff. But again, like Lou Gehrig. I mean, if I'm going to retire a first baseman, it's going to be Lou Gehrig. And then Don Mattingly was the heart and soul of this team as a first baseman. Those two guys, I have no hesitation. I like Teixeira. I would have honored him and given him some, something. But retiring the number, I was hesitant on that one. And like, I mean, I'm on the fence with Tino too. Tino was clutch here, beloved here, and so on and so forth. He was part of a very special group. Very special group. Yeah. I'm telling you, Soto's a generational player. I mean, there's no player we can sign for or trade right now that would have the same impact that Juan Soto would have here. I I'm a firm believer in that one. Mm, yeah. And Notre Dame, yes, Notre Dame football. More retiring numbers. They honor their players. That's it. And you know what? Can't complain about that. Especially that team. They got freaking like 90 guys on the roster. So like you're gonna be repeating a lot of numbers. No, you know, players of distinction. Yeah, Texas. That's a great point. It's a great idea. Yeah, Phillies are winning 5-3. Unbelievable. I'm gonna go in there and watch the rest of the game. My wife's pretty excited right now. She was pissed off early when the Phillies were down 2-1. So I'm sure she's happy now that they're up 5-3. Good stuff. Tats, have a great weekend, man. Always appreciate you coming on, and I appreciate you coming on and listening to Bobby and I. And yeah, if you're around, man, hop on. We'd love to have you tomorrow. We'd absolutely love to have you, Tats, man. There was no trade for Soto without a fat extension. Yeah, I think that goes without saying, Mr. Bryan. You got to have an extension set up, and this is right up Scott Boris's alley. So I don't think Soto would want to move again. So have that extension there, and then have the opt out. I would rather give an opt out than a no trade clause. So honestly, I would rather give an opt out. You give an opt out after 5 years, let him cash in again at 30. And Scott Boras likes his clients, the big clients, to be able to cash in twice. Well, I'm giving you the opportunity to do that. If you stay healthy and productive, you get another 10-year deal. There's only been 2 players to get multiple 10-year deals. A-Rod's one and Manny Machado's the other. Okay? So Soto will be the next. If the Phillies win tonight, I think they might win too. Yeah. And now I think it's going to be the Houston Astros. And if the Phillies play the Astros in the World Series, I hope they get sweet revenge on the Astros. They have some, you obviously got Bryce Harper, but you got other guys that they didn't have before. You got Trey Turner. You got Bryson Stott, young impact player. And you also have Jose Alvarado for the bullpen. Underrated pieces, but important parts. And you have Dave Dombrowski, who's the X Factor. So he's that guy that will do anything to make his team win. And win a World Series with the Red Sox, win a World Series with the Phillies. He's doing, he's the essentially the next Theo Epstein. So GM version of Theo Epstein. So be kudos to him. But let me let you go, folks. I appreciate y'all coming on. Peace and love to all these. I'm going to watch the rest of the game with my wife. Have a great night, and I hope to see you all tomorrow night. Oh my God, yeah! If you put Soto, you bat him second, Judge third. Oh my God, murderer's row right there. That would be a murderous one. I want hell for pitchers 1 through 6. If we can get 1 through 6 somehow, that would be phenomenal. In which the Yankees would need some bats. And again, they have the ability to do that, and they have the pieces to trade to get it, especially in positions that are blocked. So this is your chance to make a huge impact. Have a great night, everybody, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.